to you a moment about power, climate equity or climate justice, and some of the dynamics that condition the perpetuation of oppression. So power is often defined through agency. Agency is the freedom or ability to act independently or make conscious choices or decisions for oneself. Power in social justice is defined as the ability to affect the world or to change your circumstances. This is often determined by access to resources, unequally distributed globally, wealth, whiteness, citizenship, patriarchy, heterosexism, and education are a few key social mechanisms through which power operates. Social power, I'd love to share this definition, or how one is viewed and the self-image one has, often dictates a sense of entitlement or lack of it. The more marginalized the groups that people are a member of, the less they are looked to for solutions. The less they will put their experiences forward in settings dominated by people from more privileged groups. This determines who dominates the situation and whose opinion is taken seriously, or what I like to call the legitimization of authority. Generally, the people with the least social power know the most about what is taking place, because their survival depends on it. The more the setting is dictated by a stand for the status quo, the less the particularity of their experiences will be expressed, delegating those from the dominant culture with less information. These dynamics cause the issue that the ones who are expected to solve problems are the least equipped to do so. So two factors that largely condition the perpetuation of oppression, the first being conversation, the power of our words, our unconscious statements, dialogue, narratives. The second factor is trauma. We live in a world where just about everything is bowed and rifted by systemic trauma and oppression. This affects the lives of all people within the systems, uplifting a dominant narrative and suppressing the stories and perspectives of marginalized people. This affects, as well, the degree of happiness or trauma-warping mental health of people in the system, which means that as a result, and in many cases, short-term feel-good is far outweighing common sense. Given that people are walking around with a ton of trauma triggers with no disclaimer, you can imagine if you trip one of these seemingly invisible landmines, you can end up on somebody's wrong side. No matter what amount of common sense, it won't get in. That's why trauma stewardship, or holding space to a sense of kindness and unconditional positive regard, can help us to build and mend bridges, and in turn be more effective at our goals. Just remember, it's not about being right. Sometimes it can be hard for people to sacrifice that for the sake of efficiency. So it's about helping others to both feel right with themselves and with you, so you can exchange ideas and co-create positive movements. Many who have privilege based on holding non-target identities are traumatized and deformed by guilt or shame and a sense of diminished integrity as they live within a system that limits recognizing humanity's full potential. Those without privilege based on arbitrary social categories are pressed into ways of being that discount their dignity and the authority of their narratives, effectively limiting their agency and access to self-determination. We have to learn how to talk to one another, how to bridge across the barriers of stance, privilege, and awareness to form bonds that lead to the unified movement for the sake of our planet. So another relevant aspect of trauma is microaggressions, which are often unconscious, unintentional, but oppressive statements that are used every day and effectively classify people as other. If one or more person tells me something a million times in that day, it's going to have a much larger effect on my mental health than somebody who never even hears it. These statements have been described as death by 1,000 cuts. So we need to learn how to talk about this and how to talk with each other across sociocultural barriers. Only when we heal this deep rift of wanting to be heard and honored as human beings with inherent value will we begin to step forward together into a sustaining future. I like to describe privilege like archways that are so wide open you don't even notice them, but are closed and locked doors to others. To continue this analogy, the maze-like labyrinth of corridors some need to traverse in life to move forward leave them depleted and exhausted, not nearly as far along with the basics as those with privilege to not even notice these thresholds. Let me explain equity, because equity and equality are two different things. Equality is just the assumption that you can give everybody equal stuff and it'll be fine. Not considering that some people maybe start out way further back or move slower thanks to something like their ability, or maybe have intergenerational traumas to unweave. Climate justice or climate equity is the idea that more developed countries should first hold more of the burden of lowering their emissions, to give underdeveloped countries a chance to catch up in terms of important achievements like building hospitals. Similarly, by considering things like the research for climate adaptive plants, we can see that climate change will have negative effects to some cultures who don't have enough of this development factor. Most of us know that the global north has exponentially more annual emission rates than the global south, but the global south is actually more affected by climate change and warming. So it's really more our, and by us, I mean the global north's responsibility to take the proper actions toward climate protection. Just a little bit from me, and I'd love to share more later.